In this video, I want to talk about why I'm asking you to look up YouTube videos with about your topic. In fact, you should have kind of two. You should have two topics. One is the one that you're really thinking about pursuing. The other one is another one that looks good, but it's not your first choice. It's an alternate topic. Now, the reason you should kind of work on two right now and pick some videos to be over one and another one over the other one, some other videos over the second or the alternate topic, is that as you continue on in the class, you might realize that one topic doesn't actually work out the way you think it would have worked out, and so then you can switch. Now, just remember, anything in this class that you read or that you listen to as a discussion or a video clip or a live class discussion if we're meeting as a live class, anything that I talk about, anything that you read is open for you to take as a research topic. And so sometimes I'll give examples, and I will actually show you how I would work it, and then if you actually wanted to run with that and use my model or my example, I would be fine with that. Just so don't forget that. Now, you might have just a topic in mind already that is not even related to anything we said, and that's fine as well. I'll give you some pointers as to how to work with the topic later on. But right now, I just want to say, I want to give you some information about how it relates to the YouTube videos I'm having you watch. So there are all sorts of texts that you're going to get involved with as you begin this journey, this process of writing a good research paper. And the first thing you need to do is obviously pick a topic, and I'm assuming that for very many of you it's just going to be a general topic. And within that general topic, that there's going to be a range of ideas that you can focus on. But there also could be a range of curious questions that you have about that topic. So, one good thing is to realize, well, what exactly is the topic I'm writing on or thinking about writing on? If it's this, this topic, then ask yourself, well, is there anything I really am actually genuinely curious about concerning this topic? Okay. And I'll give you an example. It's kind of a dorky example. I should probably, spend more time preparing for these videos and come up with better examples. This one just is coming out of the air to me, but I'm kind of apologizing for it, but I'm kind of not, because that's how it works. I mean, sometimes you need to be willing to entertain something that on the surface is like, really, you want to look at that, but then you realize there's something deeper there, right? So it's worth looking at just about anything, right? But because of situations in my life where I'm in, I'm finding that I have to pay for braces for one of my kids, and when I finally looked at the final price tag, it's getting close to $7,000, and these are not complicated braces. I mean, I'm looking at the time the dentist is spending in the appointment, and I'm looking at the material that's in the mouth of my child, and my young adult. He's a teenager, and I'm like, are you serious? That wire and that mount, 10 of them, cost $7,000? You have to be kidding. And then this dentist is charging $282 a session. And the sessions are about 30 minutes each. And I want to know why. I want to know why it's this expensive. So that's my curious question: is why? Why is it so much? And what are the possible answers I might get out there? There might actually be material aspects to this that I just have no clue. Like, let's just say that there's only a certain type of metal you can actually use in the mouth, and it has to be this type. And that type is very expensive to mine or whatever, and when you actually look at it carefully, you realize, oof, the profit margin for the dentist is only maybe 10% because of the way this material is actually so expensive, and this seems to be the only material that can be used, something like that. You see what I'm saying? I mean, so I have to entertain the notion that there might be that pricing might be calculated that way, right? But what if the dentist tells me, hey, it's a closed market. I mean, if you're going to come to me, or you're going to go to another dentist, or you're not going to get braces, right? I mean, if you're going to get braces and you're not going to like monkey around with some sort of DIY project, whatever, coat hangers, I don't know, that's just go to Lowe's, get some wires and do it yourself, then you're coming to a dentist, right? And in this area, there are 20 dentists, and guess what? We're all charging the same price. So, whether you come to me or someone else, you're going to be paying $7,000, $6,000 for dentistry, for braces, right? So, the dentist might be telling me, well, the reason I'm charging so much is because I can't. This is what people are actually willing to pay. We know that they will still come for braces if we charge this, whereas if we charge $10,000, they will not come. But if we charge $7,000, we'll still get enough to keep us busy. Some people won't come, but enough will, so that we can still run our business. So we know 7,000 is the magic number, and we all know this, and we're all charging it. So that's sort of a collusion, right? It's sort of a cartel thing at that point. But I'm never going to get that language, but that might be a reason, right? Or the dentist might be saying, well, I had to go through a lot of skill training. I have a lot of debt. I have a lot of overhead. I have to pay for a lot of insurance. So he might be overpricing because he himself or she herself has a lot of overpriced material she has to pay for, right? Because then you can push the question back, right? And you can say to that dentist, well, why did you pay so much for your schooling? And the dentist might say, I didn't have a choice. That's what they were charging because they could. So it goes back to the cartel issue, where the dentist schools set the price as a group. And the dentist says, well, I was trapped. I had to do it. I had to take on the debt or whatever. And now I have to charge this in order to make those payments, in order to pay for my medical, my dentistry insurance, my operating, my place of business. It's expensive to operate in this town. I have to. So, you can see that I could have all sorts of answers, right? But I don't know which one is actually the right answer. Okay, so this is a curious question I have, and I could deal with the topic itself. Okay, so another technique to really generate more aspects of your topic to focus on is to have what's called the immediate approach. The immediate approach is where you're going right to the issue at hand, and like, I want to talk to that dentist. I want to figure out why it's so expensive. There's the problem. There's the question I have, and I'm going to go immediately to it. I'm going to deal with the real thing. You're dealing with the real thing, if you will. Or you can have a mediated approach, where you don't actually, at one point, you kind of change the angle of your research, right? And you don't go to the heart of the question itself, but you go to how this is represented. All right. In other words, if we were dealing with dentistry, I might say to myself, I just wonder how this person is going to respond to me if I actually call this dentist up and say, I want to talk with you face to face, even if I have to set up an appointment that I'm not going to pay for, because as soon as I get there and see the dentist, he's going to realize I don't really have an issue I need help with right now concerning my teeth. I wanted to meet you face to face because I wanted to ask you face to face, I wanted you to itemize this and explain the bill to me. Okay? At that point, what sort of language is that dentist going to use? Or what sort of defensive technique? Am I going to find a very open dentist that's going to say, great, I'm glad you came by, I can understand, I want to alleviate your problem here. I want to help you figure this out, help you understand. And I want to show you how it's fair pricing. What I mean by fair pricing, and so I might get a very open discussion, right? But I might get a dentist that says, I don't have time for this. I thought you were here, If you're not here to actually talk about teeth, then I'm going to send you to my secretary. You see, that's an evasive technique, right? So if I show up in person, how many times am I going to actually be able to talk to that dentist about the billing? Versus if I call, how many times am I going to be put on hold? How many times am I going to be shuffled around and given to a secretary or a filing clerk or someone in the front office, right? And how many times is that person going to tell me, I'm not in charge of this. I don't have a way to fix this. I'm sorry, but I can't. I'm not in charge of billing. You see, that's all evasive technique. Um, and so at this point, then my focus might be at not what exactly is the billing like, but I might be starting to research how do people respond when a client challenges the price tag. You see what I'm saying? And that's a different aspect now. And I might just be able to decide I'm going to call 10 dentists and I'm going to say, I hear that you're doing braces. How much are they overall? Just give me a price. And then as soon as they give me that price, I'm going to say, now what? Can you explain to me why it's so expensive? And I want to see what sort of language I get, what sort of response I get. So I already see how I have a text I can make that creates interest, maintains it, and rewards it. And it's going to be an investigative study. It's going to have a little data set, and it's because I'm doing a survey, if you will, and I'm collating, gathering the responses, and I'm going to try to analyze the responses and interpret them and then apply them, right? So that would be my little paper, but it would just be about how dentists defend their prices over the phone. I mean that might even be in my title. All right, so. So how would I get started on this? Well, I think the first thing I need to do is maybe Google, right? Why are braces so expensive, and see what I get. And a lot of the stuff I'm going to get might not necessarily be your fantastic source, your rigorous source, your peer-reviewed source. So depending on my audience, the professional level of my audience, I may or may not be able to actually use that source in my text, right, and what I create. But I nevertheless want to see what the internet has to say about it, whether it's a weird website or not. I'm going to start collecting ideas, and this is what I call catalyst research. It's a catalyst for more ideas, or for a better approach, or for another way to look at it. All right. So when I send you to YouTube, I'm not saying I need to see YouTube videos in your paper as support for your argument or whatever. You may or may not want to do that. I mean, if you find a great YouTube video, then that's where it needs to be. I mean, YouTube videos are not weak sources just because they're YouTube videos. If it's a weak source, it's because the author is making unsupported claims, or they're not defining their terms very well. They don't have to do that explicitly, but you can just know they're playing with words, or they're really too flippant about it, or they don't really have a lot of data, but they're thinking they do. There's all ways to make a weak source, but you can have an extremely strong source that's a YouTube video. So I don't have anything against these sorts of things. I'm just saying I don't want you to think that I'm sending you to YouTube because I want you to use YouTube sources in your paper. You may or may not do that. That depends on your choice. Once you figure out what makes a strong source, what makes a weaker source, But I want you to go to YouTube just to see if you can have run across something that sparks ideas, or that gives you another term that you didn't know was how people are referring to that. And now that you have that term or that phrase, you can be much more effective in how you type things into a search engine. So there's a lot of good things you can get from YouTube, but it's a catalyst text. It's just a text, right? Yeah, sure. I'm calling a video a text because it's copyrightable, it's replayable, it's a public thing, it's been published, right? That means an audience can review it, and it has a message to communicate. So, to me, all of those things, it's in a fixed format. The electronic configurations of magnetic fields and electrons that gets crystallized in the hard drive and uploaded to a server. Sure, that's a fixed format. So, all of that makes that video a text to me. So I don't want you to think when I say text, I'm talking about always a piece of paper that has words on it. I would specifically refer that as a document, but even that has some issues. But anyway, go to YouTube to start, your process of just jumping in the swimming pool of all the content and all the ideas that are out there that you're going to have to kind of get familiar with, and I think YouTube videos might be a very shallow end of the swimming pool, but it's part of the pool nonetheless, and you need to jump in and start swimming in this world of content that is going to help you, come up with creative approaches to your topic. So that's what I would, that's my little apology, if you will, defense of sending you to YouTube at the beginning of this. Now, one thing I really want you to do is I want you to think in terms of a pyramid, and I want you to think in terms of a target, like an archery target. Okay, so think in terms of a pyramid. Let's talk about that picture really quickly. At the bottom might be a very, very, very general notion of your topic. Like, let's just say advertising. That's a huge topic. That's huge, and if you just type in advertising or YouTube videos on advertising, you're going to get overwhelmed, right? So you might need to get more specific by throwing in a qualifying word like an adjective or a participle, a prepositional phrase that adds more specificity to it, makes it more specific. Like, let's just say food advertising. Okay, now you've got a subtopic. It's a focused angle of the big topic. Under the umbrella of advertising, it's got its own little space. But you're realizing now you're eliminating other stuff that you don't have to look at right now. Now you're focusing on food advertising. So if the word advertising was a very broad base of the pyramid, now food advertising is like going up the pyramid, and the base is getting smaller because it's less of surface area, whatever, than the big base. So you're narrowing. Now let's say you go up even more and you throw another qualifying word in there like food advertising for children. Okay, now you have a topic that is really getting more narrow. And a narrow topic is good if you have a small text to create about the topic. I'm not asking for a 50-page essay here, right? I'm asking for it's a small research paper. If you want to exactly see how long it needs to be, just go to work folder 8 or work folder 7 and look at the requirements. It's going to be 1,500 words or 2,000 or 2,500. That's not long at all. And then just double that for the maximum. Like if the directions say that you need to write 2,000 words as a minimum for your research paper at the end, then the maximum would be 4,000. I'll never dock a paper that really goes long and maintains the quality. But there is a skill of writing, knowing how to write, knowing what to write, and then there's an equally important skill knowing what not to write and how to stop. Right, so I'm giving you a window to work in because that's another thing to practice as a writer. But anyway, food advertising to children, and then you throw that into some search engines, and you might actually find a PDF, a journal article that looks at how broccoli was advertised to children, and then you can start with that one, right? So from the pyramid allows you a very broad topic and then as you walk up it can narrow. And then as you can work on any one of those steps of the pyramid, depending on how hard it is to find material. You might need to just read about advertising in general, or you might be able to find some very specific things, and that's fine. You might just be able to work towards the top of the pyramid. Now, the other picture I want you to kind of think of is there's a couple ways to think of this picture, but let's go ahead and call it the source tree. So I want you to think of a tree. Again, that's one way to look at this. But what I'm talking about is if you actually find one good source on your topic, like food advertising for children, there is actually a journal article about how companies marketed and advertised broccoli for children. And I've got that PDF sitting on my shelf somewhere, that journal article. But you know what's in the back of that journal article? About 70 sources, right? So at this point, I can use that one article. I can go to the back. I can find 3 others, right? that look like they're within that there's something I want to look at, because they're also talking about food advertising to children, but they're mentioned in the back as a source. And then I get those three others, you see, and I get them from the databases, and I look in the back, and I find two other sources here, four other sources. So you see how I have a tree, a branch tree forming? But it started just with one really good source that mentioned other sources. And at that point, I could just go to that source list from that one source, and I could let that source list guide me. And because usually from one source list, I'll find like four articles or books to look at that promise, just by the titles, that they're kind of there's a really high probability that they're going to help me. Well, from those 4 or 5, I can get 3 or 4 from each. All of a sudden, I'm branching out, you see, and that one good text all of a sudden did all my research work for me, if you will. So, sometimes you can view that as a tree, coming out. Or another kind of nifty analogy here is archaeology. You can go digging, and as soon as you find that one vein, that one great thing, it leads you to 3 other things, and each one of those leads you, and you're digging down deeper. You're source digging. It's like you go to the back, that reference list or that works cited list in the back, and that's your archaeological dig. When you start digging through that for more sources, and each one of those turns out to be its own dig that leads you to others. That's a great way to get a lot of material. To find one good article or one good book that did a great job with its own source listing. All right, so we talked about the pyramid. We talked about the source tree, or the archaeological dig, if you will. There's kind of two pictures for the same concept. But I also want to talk to you about the archery target. So sometimes you might actually have a very specific thing you want to focus on. Like, let's say during the time of the pandemic, towards the end, a lot of news articles came out about people getting very angry in airplanes. Remember that? And they were punching passengers and attacking the stewardesses. I'm not saying hundreds of people did this, but enough people did weird things in the airplane cabin during the pandemic because of masks or all sorts of, I don't know, the fact that they had to wear a mask really infuriated some people. Enough people did silly, crazy stuff like that they made it into the news cycle. So that might be a phenomenon that you want to research. But if you go looking now, if you think in terms of the archery target, that would be like the bullseye, right? That's very specific. And if you actually go online to try to find source work on that, what you are going to find are news articles that talk about it, like this happened. They're very short. They're interesting. Maybe you get a little, video clip that someone took on their phone as some other passenger was punching the wall or something, on the plane. So there's no problem really in finding the actual, like, little article that says this happened on this flight on this day. But, do you find articles that try to analyze that try to explain that try to bring interpretation to that, right? And I make a little time out here. I make these videos and I use them for like 10 years. So like 10 years from now, there might actually be work on this, right? But this is 2023. We're just coming out of the pandemic, and I'm telling you, there's no work that's easy to find in the databases and academic books that deals with the airplane incidences. Okay, which I would tell a student, I say, hey, that's actually kind of a good sign, because you have something unique to contribute. That's going to be easy to make a contribution there, or to start a conversation there, because there's space. I mean, not a lot of people are writing on that, right? But then how does that help you find source work to bring to your paper to kind of make it intertextual? In other words, as academic writing and assessors of academic writing, your teachers are going to want to see you working with articles and books and other sources in your paper. You don't always have to do that, but we like to see that. So how are you going to bring sources in there, right? And what I would say is, at that point, you're at the bullseye of the target. You need to expand out to like the first ring around it. In other words, get a little more general. So maybe you need to be researching road rage, because I know there's academic work on that. You see what I'm saying? And you might find something in road rage that you can apply to plane rage or airplane rage or air rage or whatever you're going to call it, because you can convince your reader that there's enough of similarities, or there's enough of a collection of shared characteristics between the two, that what is true about road rage is also true about cabin rage or whatever. And that might be your original contribution. But see, the way you would research this is you would, I think, need to be reading about road rage and looking for something that you can apply to your idea of what's happening in the airplane cabin and why it's happening, okay? And then you might need to expand out to another ring of the target, a ring that's even more toward the outside, more general, in fact, and that might be just researching about temper and how people come to physical altercations, right? Because road rage and airplane rage, the thing that we're looking at is actually violent. I mean, we're talking about people doing things with their fists, or with, unfortunately for road rage, often with their bumper. You know, they're smashing cars, or they're shooting. You know, they're pulling out a gun from under the seat and shooting at another car. So this is a disputation or an altercation that is turned physical. So you might need to be reading about the nature of physical conflict, right? But maybe even an outer ring would just be anger. I mean, all of these involve anger, right? So maybe you just need to read very generally about anger so that you can learn concepts that you can apply to the cabin situation, to use to interpret it, so that you give your reader a unique understanding or a unique opinion on it. You see what I'm saying? So this would be a good example of that archery target. With, you're starting at a bullet that's like, oh, I can't find anything on this thing. Well, think in terms of the outer rings. There's a bigger ring. There's a ring that's even bigger than that, and a bigger one. Maybe you need to go out to these rings to learn things to bring back to the center. You see what I'm saying? So that maybe that's what you should be looking for as you go through YouTube videos and all that. So I hope these are some strategies that help you. And I'll be talking more about topic selection later, but this ought to give you some guiding light, if you will, or at least explain the reasons why I'm having you do the assignment. All right, good luck.